Take a moment and look at your hands. Everything you have built, your career, your friendships, the respect your family has for you is held together by a single, invisible thread. We call it reputation. It takes 10 years to build that thread and exactly 10 seconds to snap it. Most people think their reputation dies in a single, explosive moment of failure, a scandal, a crime, a massive lie. But they are wrong. Reputation doesn't usually burn down in a fire, it rots from the inside out. It's a slow, silent decay caused by habits so small you don't even realize you're doing them. You might be a good person, but if you carry these 4 toxic shadows, the world is slowly closing its doors to you. People are smiling to your face, but they are stopped trusting you months ago. Today, we aren't just talking about etiquette. We are going into the laboratory of the soul. We are using the ancient, ironclad wisdom of Stoicism, the philosophy of emperors and slaves, to identify the 4 silent habits that are killing your respect. If you want to be the person who commands the room without saying a word, you must kill these habits before they kill your future. Before we dive deep, I want to say something to the Stoic daily community. You are the reason this channel exists. Your hunger for evolution is what drives us. If you're ready to stop being liked and start being respected, hit that like button and let's begin this transformation. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world during his time, wrote in his private journals, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." He knew that the world doesn't 39th care about your intentions. It cares about your actions. Seneca, another giant of Stoicism, warned that the greatest tragedy is a man who dies without ever truly knowing himself because he was too afraid to look in the mirror. Today, we are holding up that mirror. It might be uncomfortable. It might even hurt. But as the Stoics taught, the truth is the only thing that sets a man free. Habit 1. Gossip's paradox. Let's start with the most dangerous one because it's the most fun. Gossip. It feels harmless. Doesn't 39th it. A quick comment about a co-worker's divorce. Did you hear about a friend's failure? It's the social glue of the modern world. We use it to bond, to laugh, to feel like we are in the know. But here is the Stoic law of information. If you are the person who brings the news of someone else's downfall, you are announcing to the world that you are a person of low character. Think about this. When you speak ill of someone who isn't 39th there, the person listening to you isn't 39th, thinking, "Wow, thanks for the info." Deep down, their subconscious is screaming if he talks about them this way to me. What does he say about me when I leave the room? The story of Carla. I remember back in my university days, there was a girl at 39th, let's call her Carla. She was brilliant, quiet, and carried herself with a certain dignity. We had a friend group that survived on gossip. We were small-minded, though we didn't 39th know it then. One day, a private detail about Carla's personal life was leaked. It wasn't 39th a crime, it was just intimate. Within 48 hours, the entire department was whispering. We thought it was a joke. We thought it was just talk. I watched Carla walk through the hallway that day. She didn't 39th cry. She didn't 39th scream. She simply looked at us, at all of us, with a look of pure, cold realization. She saw that we weren't 39th friends. We were vultures. She walked away and never spoke to any of us again. Years later, I realized Carla did on 39th lose her reputation that day. We lost ours. We became the people no one could trust. We became the small minds. The Stoic solution, Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, gave us the ultimate shield against this. He said, if you hear that someone has spoken ill of you, do not defend yourself. Simply say, "And 39th, he must not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned only these. And 39th. But more importantly, he taught us to starve the fire. When someone brings you gossip, don't 39th join in. Don't 39th even nod. Use the power of the Stoic silence. When you refuse to participate in the destruction of another person in 39th's image, you send a shockwave through the room. You are saying, "My mind is too occupied with virtue to be occupied with trash." That is how you earn respect, not by knowing everything, but by being the person who doesn't 39th need to say anything. Narrator, but gossip is just the surface. The next habit is even more destructive because it involves the most valuable currency you own, your word. If your word is worth nothing, you are worth nothing. Let's talk about the trap of unreliability. How would you like to continue? Since we are aiming for a massive, high-impact script, I have focused on making the language more evocative and punchy than the original. Habit 2, the fragile promise. Imagine you are building a house. You pick the finest wood, the most beautiful glass, and the strongest roof. But the foundation is made of wet sand. How long before the first storm brings it all down? In the world of character, your word is your foundation. The second habit that is quietly killing your reputation is unreliability. We live in the age of flaking. We say, "I'll be there," when we mean maybe. We say, "I'll send that email," when we mean if I remember. We make promises to please people in the moment, but we break them when the moment becomes inconvenient. The psychology of the cheap yes. Why do we do this? Because we are cowards. We are afraid of the awkwardness of saying no. So we give a cheap yes. We buy a few hours of peace by promising something we have no intention of doing. But here is the Stoic truth. Every time you break a promise, you are not just lying to others, you are murdering your own self-respect. The story of Juliana's birthday. I remember a time when I thought my vibe was more important than my schedule. I was invited to my friend Juliana's 30th birthday. She had spent months planning. I told her I wouldn't miss it for the world. But when the day came, I was tired. I was busy with things that didn't end 39th matter. I told myself, she has so many friends. She won in 39th even notice I and 39th am not there. I sent a text a week. Pathetic excuse 2 hours after the party started. She replied with, "No problem. Have a good night." It seemed fine. But our friendship was never the same. I didn't and 39th just miss a party. I showed her exactly where she ranked in my life. I showed her that my word was a currency that had been devalued to zero. I was a nice guy, but I was in 39th a man of my word. The Stoic commandment, Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your every action, word, and thought be those of one who could depart from life at any moment." If you died tonight, would your last act be a broken promise, a missed deadline, a maybe that never happened? The action plan, the iron no and the golden yes. 1. The iron no. From today, if you err in 39th 100% sure you will do it, say no. It will hurt for 5 seconds, but you will be respected for 5 years. 2. The golden yes. If you say you will be there at 8, be there at 7:55. If you say you will finish the task, finish it until your fingers bleed. Have it. 3. The ego of the interrupt. There is a specific kind of arrogance that doesn't 39th use a megaphone. It uses a cutoff. Habit number 3, interrupting. Most people don't in 39th listen to understand. They listen to reply. They are like a sprinter at the starting line, waiting for the other person to take a breath so they can jump in and win the conversation. The hidden message. When you interrupt someone, you are in 39th just sharing an idea. You are screaming, "My thoughts are more valuable than your existence. You are a background character in my movie." The manager's lesson. Early in my career, I thought interrupting was a sign of intelligence. I thought it showed I was fast. In a high-stakes meeting, my manager stopped talking, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You are so busy trying to be the smartest person in the room that you've forgotten to be the most useful." She was right. I was a talker. And talkers are rarely leaders. The Stoic practice of the 2 ears. Epictetus famous taught, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Listening is an act of Stoic justice. It is giving the other person what they are due, their dignity. When you wait 3 seconds after someone finishes speaking before you reply, you do something magical. You show them that you actually processed their words, the action plan. The 3-second rule before you speak. Count to 3 in your head. If the other person starts talking again, they weren't an 39th T done. Let them finish. This silence is not weakness. It is dominance through discipline. Habit 4, the vampire of complain. Narrator. Finally, we come to the habit that turns your reputation into a graveyard. Chronic complaining. We call it venting. We think it's healthy. But in reality, complaining is a prayer to the god of failure. It is the ultimate surrender of your power, the identity of the victim, when you complain about the weather, the economy, or your toxic boss. You are announcing to the world, I have no control. I am a leaf in the wind. I am a victim. Ask yourself, who do you respect more? The man who stands in the rain and complains that he is wet, or the man who builds a shelter in silence? Stoic fire. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, wars, and betrayal. Do you know how many times he complained in his journals? 0. He wrote, everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it's unendurable, then stop complaining, because it will kill you soon anyway, and the problem will be over. That is the brutal, beautiful logic of Stoicism, the story of the 2 radars. Your brain is a radar. If you look for problems, you will find them everywhere. You will become a vampire of energy. People will start avoiding your calls, not because they hate you, but because they are tired of being your emotional trash can. Action plan. The complaint fast for the next 24 hours. You are forbidden from complaining about anything you cannot change. If the coffee is cold, drink it or warm it up. If the traffic is slow, listen to a book. If the world is falling apart, find one small corner of it that you can fix. We have looked at 4 poisons: gossip, unreliability, interrupting, and complaining. If you are guilty of these, do not feel shame. Feel excitement, because today you have found the leaks in your ship, and once you plug the leaks, you can finally start moving toward the horizon. Respect is not something you demand. It is something you attract by the way you live when no one is watching. If you have made it this far, you are already ahead of 99% of the world. You have the courage to face why. Our own shadows, the challenge. I want you to go to the comments right now. Donan 39th. Just watch this video. Engage with your own evolution. Right, I choose to be a man, woman of my word. And tell me, which one of these 4 habits has been your biggest struggle? Let's build a community where we hold each other to a higher standard. Subscribe to Stoicism Daily, because the journey to the best version of you Dunzan 39th happen in a day. It happens every single day. Until next time, remember, you are the architect of your own reputation. Build something that lasts. History is a graveyard of reputations. If you walk through the ruins of Rome today, you are in 39th just looking at broken stone. You are looking at the remnants of men who thought they were invincible, men who believed their status would protect them from their habits. But time has a way of stripping away the titles and leaving only the character. To understand why gossip, unreliability, interrupting, and complaining are so deadly, we must look at the men who lived through the fire. Let's talk about Lucius Annaeus Seneca. To the world, he was the peak of success. He was the advisor to the Emperor Nero. He was one of the richest men in the empire. He wrote the very books on Stoicism we read today. But Seneca had a reputation leak. While he wrote about the beauty of poverty, he lived in a palace. While he preached about the danger of gossip and political maneuvering, he was deep in tea. He pockets of a mad emperor, the silent killer, lack of congruence, unreliability. Seneca's reputation suffered from the second habit, unreliability, not because he missed meetings, but because his life didn't 39th match his words. When the people of Rome looked at Seneca, they saw a man who was split. They heard the voice of a philosopher, but saw the actions of a billionaire politician. Because his word and his life were not a single, solid line, his influence began to rot. When Nero eventually turned on him, Seneca had very few true allies left. Why? Because you cannot build a fortress of loyalty on a foundation of hypocrisy. The lesson for you: if you say you value health, but eat like a glutton, or say you value focus, but scroll on your phone for 6 hours, you are Seneca in his palace. You are building a reputation of the fraud. Even if no one says it to your face, they feel it. And the moment you need their support, it 139th TB there. Now, contrast Seneca with Cato the Younger. If Seneca was the split man, Cato was the Iron Man. He was the ultimate Stoic. He was famous for his incorruptibility. He did and 39th T gossip. He never complained. He was so reliable that there was a common saying in Rome as certain as Cato. Think about that. Imagine if your name became a synonym for truth, the silent killer, the ego of the interrupter, modern translation. But even Cato had a flaw that limited his power. He was so convinced of his own virtue that he lost the ability to listen. He became the interrupter of political progress. He was so rigid that he would talk for hours in the Senate, a tactic called a filibuster, simply to prevent anyone else from being heard. He did in 39th to listen to the changing needs of the Roman people. He was so busy being right that he forgot to be effective. The result, because he refused to engage in the third habit, the art of listening, he pushed his enemies into a corner. One of those enemies was Julius Caesar. By refusing to listen or find middle ground, Cato inadvertently helped trigger the civil war that destroyed the Roman Republic. The lesson for you: virtue without humility is just a different kind of arrogance. You can be the most reliable person in the world, but if you use your voice to drown out others, you will eventually find yourself standing alone in a war you cannot win. Narrator: we see these two archetypes every day in our modern life. We see the Seneca, the person who talks a big game on LinkedIn or Instagram, posting quotes about hustle and integrity, but behind the scenes, they are gossiping about their partners and complaining about their luck. They have a high status but a low reputation. Hen we see the Cato, the person who is disciplined and hardworking, but so judgmental and vocal about everyone else's failures that they become toxic to be around. Both of these paths lead to the same destination, the death of respect. So, how do we avoid the fates of these historical giants? How do we ensure our reputation is a fortress and not a ruin? The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But we adapt this for our habit. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you enter the old, you must perform the audit of the 4 poisons. Ask yourself these 4 questions. Gossip: am I prepared to speak only of what is true and helpful today? Unreliability: have I made any promises I am currently dreading? If so, why did I say yes? Interrupting: can I commit to letting 3 people finish their thoughts completely today? Before I open my mouth. Complaining: can I go until noon without mentioning a single problem I cannot solve? The power of the pivot: when you feel the urge to gossip, pivot to praise. And you feel the urge to flake, pivot to discipline. When you feel the urge to interrupt, pivot to a question. When you feel the urge to complain, pivot to a solution. This is how you build a grand reputation. It's not one big act. It's 7,000 small acts of restraint. History remembers the men who conquered nations, but the Stoics remember the men who conquered themselves. You now have the philosophy. You have the warnings from history. You have the 4 habits that have been acting like parasites on your potential. The question is, what are you going to do with this weight? Are you going to carry it into tomorrow, or are you going to drop it here in the comments of this video and walk away a different person?